So as you guys know, with the start of a new season, there are new weapons added in, and with this week's update, there was on top of that weapon changes. So buffs to certain weapons, nerfs to other weapons, and with this, it changes up the meta of the game, and specifically Warzone. And at the beginning of every single season, what I like to do is break down what my 5 best loadouts within Warzone are, and give you guys an idea of what you should be using to become better at Warzone. Now, before we dive into those loadouts, I just wanted to tell you about a new sponsor of the channel, and that is Scuff Gaming. So this is something that I have actually used well before I started doing YouTube, and it is literally one of the few things that you can buy that will almost immediately make you better at the game. So this is the controller that I got, and yes, it does look pretty, but the thing that actually makes you better at the game is the buttons on the back of the controller. It makes it so that you don't have to stop aiming to do things like jump, go prone, things along those lines, reload your weapon, and doing so and being able to do more of these things at once will make you literally better at the game. It is something that I have used for a long time, and to be able to partner with these guys and to be able to partner with something that I literally use every single day is really cool. So if you want to save some money, if you're planning on buying one of these, there's a link down in the description, and at checkout you can use code INK and save yourself some money as well. So if you want to improve at the game, Scuff's a great way to do so, and I'm really glad to say that I am partnered with them moving forward. Now, these classes. So if you don't know how this works, at the beginning of every single season, I give you my 5 best loadouts. 2 of the loadouts are going to be with the new weapons, the best loadout with that individual weapon. The other 3 loadouts are the best meta loadouts, basically the best weapons with the best attachments, with the best perks that you can find, and they will make you better at the game. So let's dive into it. So to start out, on all of our classes, we're going to be using the same perks, the same lethal, and the same tactical. They have been the same pretty much since Season 1 of Warzone, and what these are first of all, EOD to counteract any explosives. If your enemies are using RPGs, C4s, anything like that, you need EOD. It's a must-use. Other people were using Cold-Blooded before to counteract thermals, but now EOD is definitely the meta. After this, we are using Overkill to use 2 primary weapons. Of course, if you pick up a second loadout, make sure you have another class with Ghost on it. That way you could be hidden from UAVs and heartbeat sensors, things along those lines. And then finally, Amped. With this one, I used to use Tracker, but I definitely think Amp's better just to be able to switch through weapons faster. If you're shooting at someone with an AR and they get up close, you can switch to your SMG or switch to your sniper at long range much quicker. After this, you have your lethal. This is going to be a C4, pretty straightforward, and tactical. I use heartbeat sensors. If you're not using heartbeat sensor, use stun or something along those lines. So first up, we have the ISO. Now, if I'm being completely honest, this weapon isn't very good in multiplayer, but it's actually better in Warzone. And the reason for that is it's got pretty decent range. So, what do you want to do with this weapon? Essentially, it's going to be a mid to short range weapon. As an SMG, it's kind of comparative to the MP7, but just not as good. Is this one of the best SMGs in the game? Absolutely not. The MP5 and MP7 are both better than it, and you're going to see classes for those later on. So with this class, the way you're going to want to look at it is the ISO is for your close range only, and maybe a little bit of mid-range where you have to aim down sights a little bit faster. Whereas your Bruin is going to be your gun for every other range, mid-range to long range. And basically the reason why we're using it with the ISO is the Bruin is definitely one of the best weapons in the game, even after the most recent nerf. Now with the ISO, the attachments we're using on it are first of all the Nightshade Barrel. This is going to improve your damage range by the most amount possible. Also recoil control, bullet velocity, and sound suppression, kind of like a monolithic suppressor. Now the downside is aim down sight speed and movement speed. So to help with this, we are using the F-Tac Vagrant. This is going to improve your aim down sight speed. We are also using the Merc foregrip, which improves your movement speed. It doesn't say it on here, but I promise you it does. That's also going to help with recoil because this gun does have a little bit of recoil you need to control. Now the most important attachment is the 30 round mags. Yes, you can use 50 round mags, and I might even suggest it if you are planning on using this as your main weapon, but since we are using it with the Bruin, basically the only time you're going to use this thing is really up close and personal when you need it for faster aim down sight time. So 30 round will do, but because we're using the 30 round mags, we're also going to use sleight of hand so you can reload faster. Now the secondary weapon is the Bruin. You're going to see this in another class later. Basically, even with the most recent nerf, it is still absolutely the best weapon in the game. And with this, I'm using the monolithic suppressor to help with that extended range and sound suppression. On top of this, we are using the Horizon barrel to help with even more damage range, because that is what was recently nerfed. Now, I'm using the Commando foregrip, not the Merc foregrip. First of all, we already have an SMG to move faster with. The second reason why we are using the Commando foregrip is it also improves the recoil by the most amount. On top of this, we are using the VLK 3x optic. This actually improves recoil on the weapon, so that's why we're going to be using it on a lot of long-range weapons in this video. And then finally, these 60 round mags, just because 60 rounds is definitely enough with this weapon, and also with it you can aim down sights and move a little bit faster, and that's of course important as well. So for this class with the ISO, is this class the best class in the game? No, but it is good. It's not a bad class whatsoever, and I do think that the ISO is definitely a viable weapon in Warzone. One that I don't think is a viable weapon in Warzone is the AN-94, which is the new assault rifle in the game. Now, the weird thing is I do think the AN-94 is good in multiplayer, whereas the ISO I don't think is good in multiplayer. So it's kind of weird, the difference between the two. The ISO is good in one, whereas the AN-94 is good in the other. It's just kind of strange. But as far as Warzone goes, this gun just isn't competitive with the other assault rifles. It has a little too much recoil, doesn't have enough range, too slow of a rate of fire. It's just kind of average. So is it one of the best weapons in the game? No, but if you do want to use it in Warzone, here's the class you should use. So basically the meta right now in Warzone is using a long-range automatic weapon with a short-range automatic weapon. In other words, an assault rifle with an SMG. So with this one, we are using the MP7, and we'll get into why in a second here. So first of all, the attachments that we have on here are monolithic suppressor, once again, staying off that radar, pretty much using this on every single weapon. Also on top of this, the X 438mm barrel. This one is going to improve your damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control. Really, with this weapon, you really need that damage range, and you really need that recoil control. So for that recoil control, instead of using a Merc foregrip, we're using the Commando foregrip. It helps a little bit more. You just don't get that bonus movement speed. On top of this, we are using 45 round mags, and once again, for that recoil, that VLK 3x optic. Basically, the time to kill on this weapon is really slow, so you only want to use this thing at long range. And it is decent at long range, it's just not as good and not as accurate at other weapons like the Bruin that we looked at before. Now, because of that, we are using this with the MP7. The reason why I say use this with the MP7 is because for an SMG, it basically has the best range. It has such a fast fire rate with such low recoil that it's just better to use this than the MP5, because the MP5 is better than the MP7, but only right up close. The MP7 is better at that mid-range, so that's why we're using the MP7 with this weapon. So on my MP7, I use the monolithic suppressor for obvious reasons, the recon barrel to improve your damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control, the Merc foregrip for the improved movement speed and also to help with recoil, the tac laser to help speed up that aim down sight speed and sprint out time, and a 50 round mag, because this is going to be your primary weapon on this class. Like I said, you only want to use that AN-94 at long range. So as a whole, not the best class in the world, and if you are using it, you're going to tend to use that MP7 a lot more just because it's a better weapon. Now, moving into the best 3 meta loadouts, the first thing you have to know is the FAL is no longer on here. After the most recent update, it's just not as good anymore. Basically, it added 1 bullet to kill at any range if you're hitting body shots. If you hit all headshots, yes, it's still a really good weapon, but it just doesn't have that consistency that it had before. So, in the 3rd place spot, what we have is the Grau and the MP5. Yes, believe it or not, even though the Grau got nerfed a little while ago, it's still absolutely one of the best weapons in the game. I do not think it's the best, but it is close. So I'm using it with the MP5 simply because the Grau is great at mid and long range, whereas the MP5 is absolutely dominant at short range. It's the best weapon at short range by a long shot. That's why I always use it up close, and then the Grau, you stick to mid to long range with it. So the class setup looks like this. So starting off with the Grau, like I said, we are going to be using this at mid to long range. So the first thing that I threw on was the VLK 3x. This just makes it so this thing basically has 0 recoil. On top of this, the Archangel barrel helps with that as well. On top of that, improving your damage range and bullet velocity. Similarly, we are using the monolithic suppressors for that sound suppression and once again damage range. Now, to once again help out with that recoil, we are using the Merc foregrip, and on top of this, it's going to improve your movement speed like we said before, and then 50 round mags because I'm generally playing either quads or trios, so you want that bigger mag size. You can get away with the smaller mag if you are playing either solos or duos, but I don't a lot, so that's why I use those extended mags. Now for the MP5, this is what I always use on my MP5. I really like it. So first of all, we have the monolithic integral suppressor. It actually improves the range to a huge extent, so make sure you're using this. On top of this, you get the bullet velocity, sound suppression, but a downside to the aim down sight speed. So for this, I am using the stippled grip tape to improve that and the sprint to fire speed. Also the tack laser to improve that. Remember what I said about this weapon? It's amazing at short range. So you need that fast ADS and you need that fast sprint out. Now on top of this, I'm using 45 round mags because like I said, you want those extended mags with those bigger groups you're playing with. And then finally the Merc foregrip for the faster movement speed and less recoil. This class is an absolute killer. If you're going to use the MP5, if you want something for close range, this is what you need right here. So as a whole, this class is an absolute killer. What I will say is a lot of people use the Kilo right now instead of the Grau, which I don't personally like. I don't like the recoil pattern of the Kilo, but it is good. And in case you want to use it, here is the class setup that you use with my Kilo. But like I said, I just prefer the Grau, so that's why I gave it to you. Now, I'll be the first to say it. This next class that I'm giving you is a little strange. It's the M4 and the HDR. Now, this is the class that I like to use in smaller games. So if I'm playing solos or I'm playing duos, this is the class I like. First of all, I think the M4 gets looked over a lot just because it's been good since the beginning of the game. People kind of get bored of it, but it is an incredible, incredible gun, even though they've nerfed it like 4 times. Now, I use it with the HDR because in those smaller games, I like to use a sniper rifle, and that's because at long range, you're able to pick someone off and they're almost immediately dead. They don't have 3 people or 4 people that can actually just go and res them right away. So that's when I like to use a sniper rifle. I don't often use one in trios or quads. Now, the class setup I use is also a little bit weird. As you may notice right away, I do not have a VLK scope on this rifle. It's the only one that you're going to see where I don't use it. And that's because in this class setup, I'm going to be using it as an SMG and as an assault rifle. So at mid-range, I'm using this. At short range, I'm using this. And then at long range, I'm using the HDR. Now on this, once again, using the monolithic suppressor, pretty much like on everything. We're also using the M16 barrel. This is going to improve your damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control. Mainly, you're using it for the recoil control, but the damage range is also a bonus. We're also going to be using the Merc foregrip for the faster movement speed, which is important because, like I said, we're using this as an SMG. Similarly, we're using the stippled grip tape for the same kind of reason. But we are also using the 50 round mags. I pretty much use extended mags on everything just because it takes more health to kill people in Warzone than it does multiplayer. Multiplayer, this isn't needed, but in Warzone, it definitely is. Now, as far as my sniper, you could use the Kar 98 here, but I use the HDR just because it's a little bit more consistent and easier to hit shots. If you're a good sniper, use that Kar 98, but for me, I like to use the HDR with, like I said before, the monolithic suppressor, the 26.9 Pro barrel. This one improves the damage range and bullet velocity, which makes it easier for you to hit shots. On top of this, the tack laser for faster aim down sight speed. I'm growing to really like the variable zoom scope, so when people are really far away, you can still pick them off. Really great for solos. And then finally, the F-Tac Stalker Scout for, once again, a faster aim down sight speed. So like I said, this is the class that I use on those smaller game sizes. For solos, for duos, this is what I go to, and it's because that M4 is so good at close range and mid-range, it allows you to use a sniper rifle as your secondary. The only downside to this class is you don't have that SMG for faster movement speed, but if you, with that sniper, if you can pick people off, you will be successful with this class. So our last class here is just a combination of 2 weapons we've already looked at, the Bruin and the MP5, using the exact same attachments we talked about before, so no reason to talk about these again. Now, why is this the best class? Well, the MP5 just shreds up close. It's the best weapon up close. There's no reason to use anything else. The MP7's also good, but the MP5 will outgun it up close and personal. And then the Bruin is just amazing at mid and long range. It has barely any recoil, really fast fire rate, really easy to use. And because you can change down to that 60 round mag, the movement and aim down sights is pretty good on it as well. And that's the magic of the Bruin. My guess is that the Bruin will probably get nerfed again, probably around the mid-season update, but until then, use it while you can. I know a lot of people are sick of it. I hate to put it as the best weapon again, but it's just kind of the current meta of the game. So let me know what you think of all of this down in the comments. These are my 5 best classes. Well, 2 of the loadouts are just the best classes with the new weapons, but then the other 3 are absolutely the best current meta loadouts within the game. So hopefully this was able to help you out. If it did, it's always appreciated if you hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, like what you see, want to stay up to date on everything Call of Duty, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check out Scuff down in the description. And as always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out.
We are reaching for the stars, but we're making this too hard.